everybody. Welcome to another Off the Lips. Hello, Michelle. Is there anyone here that's here today for the first time? Yes, thank you so much for coming, Sean. It's nice to have you. So as you know, at the Green Room, we have our weekly speaker sessions. And today we have the privilege of welcoming one of our very own members to come speak about his profession in agroecology. I'm not sure what it is we're going to learn about soil today, but I'm very excited. I love the earth and we love the earth. Yay. So yeah, welcome, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. So before I get into this, you are the first non-scientists that I'm presenting this to, so you are officially the guinea pigs. What I've attempted to do is take basically a decade's worth of personal interest and academic interest and experience and condense it into 20 minutes. So there's a lot of stuff that I've simplified and potentially oversimplified, a lot of stuff that's been skipped, but I hope that you're able to follow the logic with me. If you have questions, stop me, ask me, I really don't mind, or you can ask me at the end. So to begin with, conservation, land management, and basically our approach to nature and what's around us can be divided into two main spheres or two main groups. You have the one that looks at nature and says that it has value because it exists. So it excludes us from nature and ultimately takes an exclusionary and a preservationist approach to it. Then you have your other, which is more, shall we say, open to the fact that nature impacts us and we impact nature. So the former of these two is called intrinsic value. And it started as a concept back in, how far back does this now go? Let's go in, yes, a long time, Industrial Revolution time. So we as humans, specifically in the West, looked at what was going on around us and said, we don't necessarily like this. We don't know, or we don't like what we're losing. We couldn't understand why. We couldn't understand the mechanisms behind the feeling and behind what was going on, but we did understand that there was an issue with what was cracking. Unfortunately, when you look at this, it does sound like a great idea, and it is a noble idea. But fast forward to the 1960s, the 1980s, and you have it being, what's the word I'm looking for here? Hijacked, shall we say, by Marxist influence academics and conservationists, which ultimately used it as a political tool to attack capitalist progression as well as our relationship and utilization of nature. In response to this, we have something called instrumental value. Now, instrumental value looks at nature and says, cool, we're a part of this. How is it that nature affects us? How do we affect it? And it takes a lot more organic view of our relationship. And ultimately, this is how we need to progress, because at the end of the day, opinions on the importance of nature may shift with culture and time. However, understanding our dependence on it will not. So therefore, if we accept this as a rule, to truly value nature, we must first understand how it works. The same thing goes for soil and how it impacts us. So now we take the focus off of me and I shift to you guys. Amber, favorite animal? Somebody can shout something, it's fine. Again? Penguin. Penguins, perfect. A food that somebody loves.
Veggies.
There we go, perfect. Lisa, places that you love. Is she here? She is here.
Places I love?
Yep, a place, anything.
Mountains.
Mountains, perfect, thank you. I'm not going to use Joburg, it's a hole. Hobbies, obviously the vast majority of us are surfers, not including me, unfortunately. And then lastly, clothing. So any of you guys that are big fans of like Louis Vuitton and so on, all of these, absolutely everything that you guys have mentioned that I love, depends on soil and depends on what's beneath our feet. I'm going to try and show you how. So soil, for the most part, is viewed as dirt. It's really, really not. It's dynamic, it's wonderful. It is something that is truly complex and truly amazing. It can be divided into basically three fractions. So you've got your physical, your chemical, and your biological. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail. You don't need to know necessarily what I'm talking about, just understand the overview. So physical, this is the dirt part. This is the little particles that make up the physical or the housing of soil. So it's clay, silt, or sand. And It provides us with things like texture, porosity, aggregation, and water holding capacity. Again, you don't need to know it, just means that it helps us create what we're looking for as a whole. Then chemical, and this is something we can understand as human beings. So just like us, plants need nutrients. Something that we have in common with plants and everything else is that we need nitrogen and we need sulfur. Why? To create amino acids. Why? Because enzymes are really important to the way we function. Also really important to the way that plants function, and that's where we get it from. Soil. From the soil it goes to the plant, plant to primary consumers, and then to us. Then base saturation, please don't worry about it. It's not necessarily necessary. pH on the other hand. Quick show of hands, who did basic chemistry at school and biology? Okay, cool. So you guys understand that you've got on one side, you've got your basics and you've got your acids, yes? Okay, so at different parts on that scale, you've got different nutrients that are available to the plant. So that's what dictates what can be taken up and what can't. CEC, cation exchange capacity, basically what's there and what the soil can make available. And then finally, salinity, very simple. The big thing that I want to focus on is the biological aspect. Now this, let me click through, incorporates a huge amount. It's microorganisms, it's your mesofauna or mesofauna within your soils. So things like bacteria, fungi, potentially things that we actually associate with disease are really important to plants. So for the most part, with nutrients, so I'm going to use nitrogen again. Nitrogen is available in the soil in different compounds or different ways. And the different ways, the different types are not necessarily available to your plant. What bacteria and fungi will do is they will go and eat organic matter that has these nutrients. They will digest it and then they excrete it or they die. And once they've gone through that process, it is then in a form that can be taken up by our plant. Protozoa basically do the same thing, and anthropods, it's basically your creepy crawlies that you see, earthworms, all sorts. Really nice segue into biodiversity. Does everybody have a decent idea of what biodiversity is? Okay, fantastic. Okay, cool. So more than half of the world's entire biodiversity is found beneath our feet and made up of microorganisms. So that's great, but why is it important? Good question, Alex. Because biodiversity drives ecosystems. Ultimately, I want you to think of this as a clock. Big clock. Then you've got little cogs and bigger cogs that make the whole thing work. So your species or your individuals are your smallest cogs, and they drive the ecosystem, which then they drive together, they mesh together, and then they move. And they create this whole system that works as one. The biosphere, everything is linked. We are not apart from one another at an ecosystem level or an individual level. So the aspects that need to be considered, and there are others, are sort of ecosystem health, resilience, adaptivity, longevity, and productivity. All I'm saying here is that the more biodiversity you have, all things equal, the more healthy your systems are. This is not applicable everywhere, but take it as law for now. Then resilience means your ability, or the ecosystem's ability, to change and to sort of take in external shall we say, pushes, for lack of a better word, and deal with it. The same thing with adaptability. Longevity decides how far it can extend to the future, and productivity overall is really, really important. So these then lead us to the next bit, which is ecosystem function. Now, what is ecosystem function? Again, you're going to be sitting with the whole cog or clock analogy, and you're going to be looking at three things. There are far more, I forgot that you're there, I'm so sorry, I'm standing in your way. There are far more functions, but we're going to focus on nutrient cycling. Basically, think about nitrogen again, because I'm on a roll with it, is that nitrogen's in our soil, goes into our plants, goes into us, and then back again into the soil. Biodiversity makes sure that that continues going. Then we look at water regulation, again, making sure that water goes from soil, from your rivers, into us, into our plants. So you've got this going on. And then lastly, your trophic energy, which is basically carbon from the soil, turned into plants, turned into organisms. So you've got this going, and you've got this going, and everything just works together. And that then leads us to ecosystem services, which is what instrumental value seeks to create or put a price tag on, for lack of a better term. Ecosystem services, again, can be divided into three. You've got provisioning, which is your clothes fibers. So basically anything that's on our backs comes from nature. Food, anything that we eat, comes from nature. We've got cultural, so we were talking earlier about places that we love to go. Ultimately, a lot of it has to do with nature, as is recreation, really, really important. And then lastly is regulatory, things like water quality, air quality, and so on. Absolutely vital. So what I've done, and what I've tried to explain to you guys as best as I can, and I keep getting in your way, I'm so sorry, is that we're looking at a conventional trophic approach. Things at the bottom impact things at the top, and you create this system. Thank you, I really appreciate it. And this is the foundation for what we call restoration ecology or restoration conservation. We fix what's at the bottom and it goes up. That said,
Cute.
isn't he adorable? So, it also goes the other way, is that what we do and what your, let's say, your apex predators do also impacts everything below it. And you can use that to your advantage. So ultimately what we do is we take a top-down approach to ecology and to a system, and we say, take this, which I gave you earlier, and we turn it right onto its head. And this is where the idea of rewilding comes from. So what you do is that you use keystone species and your ecosystem engineers, like beavers, like elephants, like even dung beetles and termites actually, and you reintroduce them to an area, and that impacts your plants, for example. Then your plants in return impact your insects and your birds, which impact your soil. So they're antagonistic. The one goes up, the one goes down, and they work as a system. So in summary, what does it all mean, and what am I yammering on about? Soil impacts us directly, as we've gone over. Even just basically at an agricultural level, we know that it does. But it also impacts us indirectly. And this is something that, until this point, instrumental value has sort of failed to take into consideration. But the two studies that come to mind that have been done in the last 5 to 10 years one looks at mental health and the sort of precursors to mental health in urban settings. And one of the big contributors to that, in fact, the largest contributor to that, was being able to listen to birds, being able to hear birds within your setting. Helps us regulate our anxiety, helps us regulate our systems, and makes us better people for each other and for what's around us. The other one is productivity within a corporate setting. Now, I know that not many of us are very corporate-y here, but stay with me. So productivity ultimately comes down to mental state. Now, mental state is obviously affected by a whole bunch of things. One of the biggest contributors to that is being able to find near you moving, healthy water that you can sit with, that you can listen to, and basically just be affected by at a, what's the word I'm looking for? Ambient level. But it's not just the world, nature, and soil that affects us. We affect it as well. And in knowing that, we understand that we can influence nature and influence how nature influences us. And once we accept that, it becomes a really, really powerful way of thinking. Because we understand that we're a part of this. We cannot treat nature in a certain way without it coming back to bite us or coming back to benefit us in the long run. So put simply, there is nothing that shapes our species or our lives more than soil. In addition to that, there's no species around that shapes soil dynamics more profoundly than human beings through all the activities that we do. In closing, just remember, please, when you move forward in the things that you do, that whatever you're doing, whatever you enjoy started with soil and ultimately is going to end there too. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so, so much, Alex. That was very, very cool. Guys, do we have any questions? I'll pass you this little thing.
Thank you so much. What would you say is the impact of glyphosate or Roundup, which is like commonly used in households and in agriculture, on soil? And would you agree or disagree that there should be an alternative to glyphosate imposed?
So glyphosate's one of those things that becomes really complicated, because on one hand we need to be producing enough food for the people around us, and Roundup, glyphosate, helps us do that. On the other hand, we also can't be pumping this stuff into our soils and expecting it not to have an impact on our health and the health of the organisms around us. So glyphosate applied in very strict conditions, in very strict ways, can be a useful tool like anything else. The issue that we're dealing with is that people spray willy-nilly and think that that's okay. We apply too much, too often, and in ways that we really shouldn't. So should we have alternatives to it? Absolutely, and there are some great alternatives to it. But as things currently stand, there isn't a sort of mass-producible alternative that's going to allow us to produce enough food for a world that's already starving. And those are the issues that we're dealing with. The work that I do for Trace and Save looks at environmental sort of safety and sustainability of agriculture. And our thing is that, yes, we need to be moving towards more organic systems, but we also need to be pragmatic. We need to understand that sustainability isn't just environmental sustainability. It needs to be culturally sustainable as well as financial. Once you can create that circle, you can push things in a way that you want to, but it takes time. Anybody else?
I'm just wondering if there's like government. Do you work in the South African space?
Yeah.
Is there government incentives for like farmers to do a rewilding project on their land, or like nurture the soil back again that they kill, or what did they?
Yeah, we're getting there.
Okay.
So a lot of it is carbon-based, and Abdul will actually have a lot more information on that than I do. So we understand that you use carbon as a proxy, right? So I understand that if I manage my soils properly, if I manage to put organic material and organic matter back into my soils, that's going to affect everything else. Then you get paid for the carbon that is sequestered into your soils. So that does work. You can do it in an agricultural setting and in a natural environment. The other option, and my argument for this is that you actually need to stack these, is that you can have something called species bonds. So you look at your charismatic species, wild dog, cheetah, leopard, lion, and you basically use them as trading units like you would on the JSE, for example.
The carbon credits.
It's yeah, similar idea. So there are incentives in that sense. Governments, in my opinion, should, instead of using a stick, they need to be using a carrot, because the stick doesn't work if it's only the only thing that you use. So say to guys, listen, we'll give you tax breaks, we'll help you with X, Y, and Z, we'll do whatever to help farmers get to that point. I mean, if we think about the Karoo, which isn't particularly far away from us, is that some of the guys are making 2.5% a year. That's not even keeping up with inflation. How are they supposed to change anything, right? Now, there are more productive systems. You go to the low veld, you look at the macadamia farmers. One of the guys that I consulted for was making R250 million profit a year. So you need to use these things or look at them within their context, which is a conversation we were having. Yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
What can we as the average person do to positively impact our relationship with soil?
Understand that being a part of the system is probably the most important thing that you can do. So I think it was David Attenborough that spoke about the only way that people care about nature is if they experience it. And everybody experiences nature in their way, right? So some people experience nature through surfing. That is fantastic, do that. Some people experience it through hunting, through fishing, through hiking. Be a part of that, and the more you are, the more you're going to care, the more you find that you change sort of micro habits to be there. You don't have to do everything all at once to make a difference, right? If you have 7 billion people, or 8.5 now, doing small things, you make a huge difference at the end of the day. So embrace what's out there and enjoy it. That's the best advice I can give.
What has been the effect on pesticides in the agricultural domain on the soil, and how long does the soil actually hold on to any of their chemical imposed pesticides?
It depends on what's used, how much of it is used and when it's used. So there's a lot of work done around IPM, which is integrated pest management. So basically what you end up using is that you use biodiversity to manage your pests rather than your pesticides. So don't look at it as just pesticides affecting the system, and don't look at it as just direct impact. You need to understand that there's knock-on effects everywhere. So it's the biocides that are a problem. So it's fungicides, it's herbicides, it's pesticides. All of those have an impact, even if it's not direct. Sometimes it's necessary, sometimes we need to do that, potentially to correct something that's gone wrong, but the way that we implement these systems needs to change over time.
Thanks.
I'm going to walk on the other side of this here.
I just want to piggyback on his question. Obviously, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, all of those things go into the soil and it gets absorbed by whatever gets grown and it goes into our bodies. Some of it.
Yeah.
Some of it.
Okay.
What is the effect of that? Like, I know there's scientific research of the effects of that. And my question is just, even though people know it has an effect, they still grow it, they still sell it to us, girls get their periods earlier, cancer rises, all of those things. Are there any laws against that?
So many. But it's so hard to sort of enforce what's there. Also, part of the issue that we face is that a lot of what we look at is correlative, not necessarily causative. So we look at impact on human health and we say, cool, glyphosate's bad for us. And it is. From a your gut micro perspective, it is really, really bad for us. But context matters. How much is actually going to impact us and for how long, right? So those are things to consider. Then there's everything else that's going on in our world as well. If we look at what's in our tap water here, I promise you're going to freak out. It's not just pesticides that are a problem. It's like oil gets into our systems. It's
Plastic.
If you look at birth control as well, has a huge impact, specifically on men. So all of these things sort of compound and have an integrated effect, and there are laws to stop it. But you also need to understand that, yes, it's bad for us to a degree, but you know what's also really bad for us? Is starvation.
Yeah.
So
and that's the dilemma I want
exactly,
to,
right.
Like, we're going to die of starvation, or we're going to eventually die of the side effects of all of these pesticides.
But to your point and the point earlier that was made about glyphosate is that what we are doing and how we're doing things now, not just in agriculture, in everything, is not sustainable. We know that. If we carry on doing things the way that we're doing, nature's not going to give a shit. Excuse my language, sorry. Nature's not going to care. We will die off as a species, nature will have a freak out for a while, and then it will find equilibrium again, and we will be forgotten by the universe. So it's not that we are going to end nature, it's that we are going to end ourselves, and everything else is going to look at us and go, okay, well that was fun, now there's no more humans, cheers. Yeah.
Makes sense.
So obviously, going fully organic is extremely expensive, and it's not sustainable for in terms of food production.
No.
But do you know of anything that's actually being put into place that they're finding a balance between the two?
Oh, yeah. Okay, now you're talking my language. So I love regenerative agriculture. And I believe that agriculture and farming in general, so you're talking about game farming as well, needs to take a pragmatic approach to this. So there are instances where going fully organic can work. Absolutely, but when you have intensive systems, that's not necessarily going to be the case. Also, financially, it's a problem, right? Is that unless I can access a market, which is what we're trying to do in South Africa, where the organic guys can sell to Europe and obviously get paid in euros, then it becomes a better option because they can produce less. They're not asking as much of their soil because the soil can only give you so much. So it's, sorry again? Naturally, yeah, exactly. So once we're asking more of the soils than they can actually provide, then we move towards more and more intensive and synthetic systems. But yeah, we're definitely giving it a go. And what we are seeing with increase in carbon and increase in biological activity, so going back, more of this in our soils is that we are able to get better yields over time, but it takes time.
Brilliant.
Where was the gentleman that had...
What is your opinion on synthetic foods?
Synthetic?
Synthetic foods.
Nothing that I can say politely. So, yeah, no. We need to stay, okay, so a lot of people have an issue, you're going to put me on a rant now, have an issue with red meat. Red meat specifically looking at cattle, really not the boogeyman that it's been made out to be. You must remember that grass systems require ungulates in order to, so hooved things, okay, to function properly. If we regenerative agriculture, do our cattle properly, if we have high intensity grazing systems, if we use indigenous breeds, so Ngunis for the Eastern Cape, fantastic. They're able to graze and they're able to browse better than just about anything else, and they utilize felt at a much better level than breeds that we bring in from overseas. So these things need to be done, and we need to move away. I'm not eating an insect burger. It's not going to happen. I'm not eating printed meat. It's not going to happen, because we can do these things and we can come up with systems that work together, and that's ultimately what needs to happen.
So yeah, there are a lot of issues and problems, but maybe we can close with one good news about the soil you recently heard or something.
So the world's perception of soils is changing, and it's been changing, I'd say, for the last decade. People are starting to understand that we can work with our soils, and that's why I wanted to start with explaining to you guys that soil isn't just dirt. It's a living, breathing thing, basically. It's an organism all on its own. And if we treat it properly, it's going to help. And that is 100% gaining traction. If you look at the US, they're starting to put in, I think they put an incredible amount of money into regenerative agriculture. Europe are doing the same thing, and so are we. And that's what we need to be doing. And that is absolutely as a direct result of our increased understanding of soils.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Alex. Alex will be around the green room if you guys have any more questions. But that's it. I hope you have a beautiful day.
Thanks, everybody.